Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. With the walleye season about ready to gear up here, I thought it would be a good idea to put out a video on just some of the basic baits that a lot of folks use in the river, some of the more popular ones, so that you're ready to catch these fish when they start moving up into the river. So stick around. So the primary method for catching these fish in the Detroit River is jigging, and there's other ways to do it, but especially during the spring run, jigging is the most popular and probably the most effective. So when it comes to the jig head, you're looking for something that runs between, say, maybe a half an ounce up to a full ounce. You can vary outside of that a little bit, but most guys are fishing with weights in that range. And that's just to make sure that you're getting it down to the bottom, keeping the jig vertical while you're drifting in that heavy current of the Detroit River. Color-wise, it can vary, and a lot of that really depends on the water clarity and the conditions that you're fishing on any particular day. When it's murky, I like to go with something like a chartreuse. In fact, when I was younger, growing up fishing the Detroit River back in the 80s when the river was really stained all year, this is almost the exclusive jig color most people use was a chartreuse jig. You could get away with other ones at times, but the chartreuse really stands out in that murkier water. Certainly other colors are useful. White is a good color to use. And when it comes to specific lighting conditions, especially when the sun's up, all kinds of different colors can start to become more effective, especially when you're in clearer water. So things like purple are common. This blue ice jig is a real popular one on the river, especially in the clearer water, especially when it's paired up with the right plastics. So half an ounce to an ounce, I would say 5/8, 3/4 are probably the ones I use most often. Sometimes I'll go a little heavier than that if the current's really strong or you have a wind that's really helping to push you with that current. Probably 5/8 to 3/4 is the more common weight. And then when it comes to the plastics that you're going to tip on that jig, it also varies based on water clarity. If you're fishing real clear water, I mentioned this blue ice jig head. A common combination there is to go with a similar pattern on the plastic. This one here, these plastic minnows are made by Lunker City. And I'll drop links in the description to both the jigs and the plastics that I'm going to present in this video. But these are 4-inch long plastic minnows, and they sell them usually at most tackle shops. They'll sell the jigs, and they'll also sell the plastics that kind of coordinate with those jigs. So that right there, especially in clear water, is a very popular combination. And on days when the water's clear and the sun is bright, this is probably one of the more productive jigs out there. What I like to use when the water's murky, in fact, last year I did a video last spring in April on the walleye run where I was kind of going over the basics of jigging the Detroit River for walleye in general. But the combination that worked the best for me that year, and the water that we fished was stained almost constantly. I don't know that we ever fished really clear water. Walleye don't like bright conditions anyway, so if they can find a slight stain to the water, they'll do it. And the combination that worked really well last year was this combination right here. It was a chartreuse jig head with this Wonder Bread plastic. Again, 4-inch long minnow by Lunker City. And it was just a killer. Every drift we're getting, 2, 3, 4 fish per drift. But, you might go out there this year. The conditions may be completely different and it may be a different color pattern. That's the hot ticket. But this is the Wonder Bread pattern, again, from Lunker City. And one thing I'll note while I've got this one up here, one of the things I like to keep on the boat is a product called Spike It. And again, I'll drop a link in the description to that as well. But Spike It is a liquid fish scent that comes with a dye in it. And I love that chartreuse dye for lots of different types of fishing. But if you've got a pattern on that you like to use, but maybe you think that giving it a little bit more visibility in the water would help, just dipping the tail of it in that Spike It will turn it chartreuse. And here you can see one of these Wonder Bread patterns without the dye, and then here's one with it, and you can see the difference. And sometimes that little bit of added, especially where the plastic is moving around the most, having that brighter color there helps catch their eye a little bit in certain conditions where you might not have as good a chance of catching their eye otherwise. So, another popular color is this emerald. I think it's called emerald ice. I don't remember the exact name. Again, I'll put a link in the description. But and I don't have any of the jigs that go with this one right now. I'll be getting some here before long. But there's a jig head again painted similar to fit this pattern. And again, this is another one that's kind of does well in clear water, but kind of as long as there's a decent amount of visibility, these ice patterns tend to be good choices. Outside of the minnows, another popular plastic that a lot of folks like to use are what are called Wyandotte worms, and it's basically just a plastic worm. Same thing, it's about 4 inches long, and popular colors are black, sort of this motor oil color is another popular one. Natural worm colors, plastic worms are what they are. They're mimicking worms that come into the river via runoff, and so these are popular choices on the worm side. And again, I'll drop links in the description for these as well. Another component to the walleye jigging in the Detroit River that will really improve your hookup rate is to make sure that you're also using a stinger hook. A lot of times, the walleye run is happening at a time when the water is still fairly cold, and walleye are not unlike any other fish where their metabolism tends to be a little slower when it's real cold like that. So a lot of times they'll bite short. And if you can imagine a walleye coming along and hitting a regular jig setup like this one, and they're coming up biting the tail of the fish or of the minnow here, they're going to come up just short. But if you slip a stinger hook on there and just kind of let it ride, I don't even attach the hook itself. And this one here is it's better to have these straight if you can, but this one here I've used a time or two and it's getting a little bit crinkled here. But just having that hook kind of floating back there in that river current, when that fish comes up there and bites short and you set that hook, you'll get that fish. And it'll definitely increase your hookup percentage. You won't find an experienced walleye fisherman fishing this time of year that won't be using stinger hooks. So that's another critical component. And then one thing that a lot of folks like to add to help improve the scent of the rig and visibility and so on is some sort of form of live bait. Generally, when the water's colder early in the run, the minnow is usually the choice live bait there. So what folks will do is put the plastic on the bait, the plastic minnow on the bait, and then they'll stick the hook through the mouth of the minnow there and just let it kind of ride on top. And then what I like to do is, again, once I've put the minnow on, then add the stinger hook on top. And that allows, as that minnow is being jigged through the water, of course that hole in his lip will open up a little bit and make it easy for him to slip off. So by slipping this stinger hook on afterwards, you're helping to keep that minnow on there. Now later in the season, when the water starts to warm up a little bit, maybe you're getting into late April or even early May, then a lot of times night crawlers become more economical and also more effective as the water warms up. I don't know if it's the scent or if it's just that there are more night crawlers in the water by that time because of all the spring runoff. But typically later in the season, night crawlers become more of an effective bait. So that's it. As I said, I'll drop links in the description. If you haven't checked out my video on how to make a stinger hook, I do a video on how to make these stinger hooks, and I'll drop a link to that video in the description as well. There's also a video I did last year on the general strategies and tactics to actually fishing for these fish in the river during the spring run, and I'll drop a link in the description to that video as well. So if you get out there this season, good luck. If you have any questions, feel free to comment back. Be happy to try to answer them. And a lot of other folks, experienced fishermen in the Detroit area that have fished this river for years, be happy to chime in and help as well. So good luck out there, and we'll see you next time.